Hello everyone and welcome back to your weekly gaming podcast, the GamerGuild Podcast, right here on youtube.com/GamerGuildTV and available up there in the digital clouds on your podcast platform of choice. You join me this week, Chris, alongside my fellow co-hosts. To my left, Mr. Rob.
Hello, I got first bit. I got second billing this week.
Well, you showed up for the live stream.
That's what you showed up for the live streams, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And below him, the cast out one, the man of many pixels, Mr. Richie. Welcome back.
I was there at the live stream. I watched the whole thing. I just wasn't featured on it.
No proof whatsoever. And of course, joining
us... It's in the chat.
Richie hates managed democracy, that's why.
Yeah, peace, democracy, liberty. Richie hates it all.
Liberty,
indeed. Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another fantastic show of the GamerGuild Podcast, where this week we've got a busy one. We're going to be talking about Microsoft potentially throwing in the towel on the console wars as we know it, as they shift up and change, with a business update coming this week. Disney make a landmark business deal with Epic Games to merge Disney into pretty much all other aspects of our life that they haven't done so already, and Assassin's Creed and Star Wars Outlaws potentially being on track for this year's release, making Ubisoft's 2024 shaping up to be quite nice. All that and much, much more. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all the great content we do here, like this very show, like our Let's Plays, First Looks, and weekly live streams where myself and Rob get together to play all the latest and greatest games, sometimes with Richie. And this past week, we dove into Helldivers. We saved the universe, the galaxy, from the threat of bugs and apparently Terminators as well, Rob. We got caught out a little bit by that one.
I didn't sleep well last night because of the trauma of
the potential looming threat.
Yeah, I had that nightmare when I went to sleep. You know, like when Sarah Connor's like holding onto the chair,
the rails,
the bomb goes off.
Well, I slept great, so screw you guys.
I think you had that nightmare, Rob, because there was 9 ladies having a party in your flat last night. More so.
Yeah.
Than the actual imminent Terminator threat. But we'll break all that down as we get into it with the show. As I said, great stuff to talk about. And we always like to kickstart the week's episode off by talking about what we've been playing, bringing it up to date. So, Richie, I'll throw it over to you because I don't know what you've been playing this week, mate, because you didn't come up for the live stream.
Yes, I didn't turn up the live stream. I have not played Helldivers, but I have watched 2 great guys play Helldivers, and yeah, it was entertaining. But I've been playing Persona 3.
Did you watch a different stream? Whose stream were you watching with these great guys?
Some random blogs on the internet. Like, you wouldn't know them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been playing Persona 3. I did start Plague Tale, but I just couldn't get... I think I talked about this last week. I just couldn't get into it. So I'll switch over to Persona 3, and I've been enjoying it so far. Persona games are quite a bit of a slow burn to really get the story moving, so I don't feel like the story's actually really kicked off yet. It's just kind of planting a few seeds, teaching you the few mechanics and stuff.
You haven't played Persona 3 before, right?
No, I've played the original Persona 3 Portal, but everything I've played is literally on the channel as a first look.
Right.
So I played like maybe an hour or 2 of it. I'm definitely past that point in Reload. But the story hasn't really started going because it's doing the slow. There's a lot of different mechanics and stuff. It's a very different game to most of RPG, so it's just doing the whole tutorial stuff.
I was going to ask, actually, how different are the mechanics game to game? Because it sounds like there's a fair bit of variance.
From game to game, from what I've seen between Reload and Persona 5, there's quite a lot of crossover, but in terms of how the mechanics operate. Some a few different tweaks here and there, but you can tell the games of the same franchise.
Gotcha.
However, they play differently to any other RPG I've really played in certain ways, because the game's kind of basically on like a calendar system. So it's not just like you go into the world, you explore an area, you get a few quests, do the things. Like, it is turn-based battle. It's almost like Pokemon-esque in some ways, the battle system. But there's this one major dungeon that just like spans the entire game, that you slowly progress your way through, and you keep coming back and back and back. It's like you can basically go there every night. Because throughout, it's weird because it is on a calendar-based system. Like, each day you can have so many actions. So it's like whether you spend time with your party mate or other friends, or go work on your skills, or different stuff like that. It's almost like very dating sim-esque.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Chuck in a Japanese RPG with some like Pokemon elements. Yeah,
it's like
there's a lot.
But like,
it is, but it works.
Yeah. Very JRPG. And this is reloaded on GamePass, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And 4 is also there as well. That was like a 1-2 hit.
Persona 4 Golden, which I think was the Vita version,
yeah.
is on Game Pass. Persona 3 Portal, which was the PSP version, I believe, is on Game Pass. And I think Persona 5 Royale, which is the full fat newest game in the franchise, is also there.
Wow.
I think they're all there, basically.
So
maybe not 1 and 2.
Just about 300, 400 hours worth of content then. If that's
Easy,
what you're
yeah,
looking for.
easy.
Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. Rob, I'll throw it over to you for our weekly live stream, as we'll be talking about it later on in the news in terms of the reviews, but we might as well get into it a little bit here. You and me checked out Helldivers 2, PlayStation exclusive, also available on PC at launch with crossplay enabled. I played on PS5, you played on PC. Via crossplay, we jumped into the world of the Helldivers, and as both big Starship Troopers fans, I think we probably enjoyed it a bit more than a non-Starship Troopers fan. But do you want to give the lovely people your first impressions and how much fun we had killing bugs?
Yeah, so I think the biggest bit of context people need to know about this game is that it only costs like 35 quid, which, you know, it's very cheap for a game nowadays. And the amount of quality and the amount of fun and polish you get for that £35 is exceptional. That's like the main takeaway for me. It's really fun. There's a lot of interesting elements that distinguish it from normal shooters. It's just a very, very good game.
That 35 quid though is why I didn't play.
What, because you didn't expect much from it, or
34?
No. It's not a reflection of quality at all. It's a game that I knew I had no interest in getting sucked into beyond like the live stream. So I was like, I'm not going to drop 35 quid in a game I have not much interest in. Where if it was on PS Plus, I'm playing with you. That's nice.
I think the argument is that I don't think it would be like a major pull for subscribers. Like, it's getting like a lot of good positive traction now, but I don't think we got that on the launch.
I think it's a miss I do think it's a miss on the PlayStation. I mean, it's selling well, so we don't have to worry about that. They made the right decision. But I always feel like if it was on PlayStation Plus, people like me would have played, and you have a chance of getting me in, and then get me on, potentially picking up a few microtransactions.
Yeah,
but because it's not, I'm not touching it.
Yeah, fair play.
I suspect with this one is we know Sony have been kind of testing the waters with PlayStation Plus and what they want to do with a few of the releases, because we saw them drop Horizon Forbidden West back in, I think it was like the March after it released. And when all that leak happened from Insomniac, we basically found like they weren't happy with its performance. They'd almost like devalued the game by throwing one of their AAA titles into PlayStation Plus. With this Helldivers in particular launching on PC and Steam day one, I think this is another throw of the dice to see how a first-party launch goes in tandem with a simultaneous PC launch. And looking at the numbers over on Steam, it's just beat out God of War for PlayStation's highest all-time peak at 81,000.
Yeah.
So
this is why
I think that's why they maybe avoided the PlayStation Plus play, thinking, right, we'll see how it runs on Steam.
I think you can double dip.
I think they will eventually, but I think...
Yeah. I think it could have double dipped. Like on PlayStation 5, you can get it with PlayStation Plus, because that's where I ideally want you to play. Although if you want it on PC, pay us.
Yeah,
I think that's
I could
that
see
wouldn't
by
work
the
better
end of
for
the
me.
year it dropping on PlayStation Plus just to like boost its numbers.
Yeah, I think initially as well. Like, I don't know about you, Chris, but I got lots of like Metal Gear Solid 5 kind of movement and shooting vibes from it when I was playing it. Like, especially like the dive mechanic.
Oh yeah,
and like the rolling kind of combat. I don't know. It's just a really. It's a game that's much more refined and much more polished than it deserves to be. It kind of reminds me of the time when games were a bit cheaper and games felt different to play than each other. Whereas now you have like the AAAs and you all kind of share a lot of mechanics and things like that. I don't know. It just reminds me of
there's a few things through playing it where I think you realise like you have to be quite strategic in the way you play, and because it can get so frantic very quickly, and because you are in a team of 3 or 4 other human beings, not just AI. It's not as structured as maybe a typical third-person shooter would be, like akin to like Outriders or The Division or something. And the chaos that comes from, I think I said in our WhatsApp group, it reminds me of World War Z a lot, because there's just stuff happening non-stop. You don't really get a moment for pause. Some of the maps are quite like condensed and on top of each other, and especially with the bugs where you just pop out of a hole anywhere, and you just, before you know it, you've run out of ammo. You're calling in airstrikes, and it's just absolute bedlam. But overall, I think you're right. There's something to it, the gameplay, where it has to make you think as a team quite proactively. And for its price point, for its polish, and for its kind of approach to what it's doing, I had a great time with it. And I think anyone who's looking for a multiplayer out there, shooter with friends, definitely pick this one up, especially if you're a Starship Troopers fan, because it is everything in it but name, essentially.
Yeah.
It seems to be what everyone wanted Outriders to be.
Yeah, in a way, I'd say Outriders took like a different track because they had a definitive like story campaign. This isn't trying to be that. It basically has like an intro video to say like, welcome to Super Earth, we're being attacked by bugs. You go through a brief 5-minute tutorial telling you about like why peace, democracy, and liberty are important, and then it just throws you in there. So there is no like cutscenes, there is no chapters. It's you have your ship. You're just saving the Super Earth from these constant threat of invasion as an online perpetual like universe, essentially.
All right, I get that, because I've always kind of felt sometimes when you go for story games and online stuff, the story always just seems to just fade away into the background. Like Chris, for me and you playing Halo,
yeah,
because we're too busy like playing and talking to each other that we're not as focused as on the stories if we're playing single player. I think it is like just a general like reflection on how multiplayer games work. But by then just taking, here's a base level story, here's the base law of what's going on, then just chuck you in and put the focus all on the multiplayer mechanics. That sounds like a fantastic way to approach it for me.
I think like the extent of the story is a map where you essentially push planets back, like you push invasions back from certain planets, and like the Galactic War map. That's your story basically. It's like, okay,
it's lore rather than narrative.
Yeah, and it just works really well. I have nothing bad to say about it.
Yeah, and as Rob described there in the Galactic map, the perpetual world is essentially Super Earth's in the centre of it all, and from the right flank you get the arachnid bug creatures attacking, from the left is the Terminator guys, and essentially as humanity in real time you have to fight them off, so there's a constant timer going whether you've liberated a certain area of the solar system or not. It's a bit like, if anyone remembers Star Wars Empire at War, where you had like your conquest mode, or Battlefront 2, the original one, where you had your conquest mode, and you'd go out and basically, as you'd push further through one part of the galaxy, you'd be attacked by another species from another part, and you'd basically have to navigate your own economy and by getting your troops out there and fighting it back. And yeah, we pretty much tackled both sets. We haven't touched it, but the Terminator mode, I think we got a very pleasant surprise, Rob, knowing that bugs are kind of like the marketing ploy for this game. But then when we got to the automatons, as they're referred to, it's not Terminator licensed, but seeing them as soon as we dropped in, we realised like the difficulty had spiked up a little bit, and you saw the red eyes with the guns coming through and laser coming towards us through the fog. Was like, oh shit, this is a totally different game.
Scary.
It changed the game completely, because we got a bit more like complacent with the way the bugs work, the kind of pack mentality, the way they move, and you can back away slowly and reload. But the Terminator ones are very offensive. They're basically, I think we dropped in, Richie, got out of our pods, and then we were fronted with like two chicken walkers from Star Wars, and it was like, and they were deflecting our bullets. They had armor, and all of a sudden we were in immediate panic. We'd only been on the planet's surface 10 seconds, and again, that's what I said about mixing it up. It feels different every single encounter. So yeah, shout out to Helldivers too. Definitely be jumping back onto that one. I hope it has a decent bit of success, because this is PlayStation's arguably first foray into their live service games they've been working on, and I think whether it's the price point or the IP maybe, but I think it's off to a good start for what it needs to be.
Definitely. And let's not ignore the fact that it was a gamble as well, switching from first person format, which everyone received well, to third.
Yeah,
wasn't Helldivers top down isometric?
Yeah, it was twin stick shooter. Yeah. So which again, great for and that's why I knew I would enjoy this, because it was just that 10 3D. But there is something about that over the shoulder view which just it does elevate it a little bit more into, you can see your surroundings a bit better, although the bugs still get you when you're not looking. But yeah, that's Helldivers 2. So there's no real reviews out for it yet because of the nature of this, and like similar to last week with Suicide Squad, is all these get live service games is the review codes aren't really worthwhile making until you've played the game in the real world with like actual players jumping on and the internet being vibrant and alive. So
it's a live game. It's going to, in a month's time, it's going to play quite a bit different.
Absolutely.
As it fix bugs and tweak mechanics, rebalance things.
Yeah, a lot of that going on. So we shall see. And I think with the roadmap, they've probably got another species to introduce. There's going to be plenty of skins. And for anyone who was maybe worried it was too microtransaction laden, I think we can put that one to bed, because there is in-game credit, as you can imagine, but all of it is gatherable via just in-game currency that you get from finishing missions. You get given medals. You spend the medals on whatever you want, weapons,
Is it
cosmetics.
all cosmetic as well?
There are weapons and stuff in there, but they're not like, again, it's not PvP, so it's not like you have a leg up over anyone else. It's a team effort. So if someone's put 40 hours into the game and they have a better gun, they have it because they put 40 hours into the game.
Yeah,
so it works that way. But again, you're not squaring off against them, so it's not like you're at
I don't mind that. I don't like that stuff in PvP because it
Exactly.
gives experienced players an unfair advantage. It makes it harder to access for us, a new player.
It's literally pay to win, which it pulls the rug out from under you a little bit. But no, this doesn't do that because of by nature of what it is. Right, gents, shall we get into the news? After all, we have a busy show lined up with some potentially industry-changing news coming from Microsoft once again. They can't rest on the laurels, these guys. They thought they'll have us with the FTC court case for the last 2 years, and just as they put that one to bed, they have a fantastic developer direct, and then they go, you know what? Let's just throw another curveball at them, potentially. So, Richie, let's put that you not showing up for the live stream to bed. And if you could introduce us to
the graciously gathered Gamer Guild Gazette, a.k.a. I did turn up, I just wasn't on the stream, the news.
The news.
I love how the more we keep mentioning it, I can feel like, even though you know it's a joke, it's slowly chipping away at your patience.
Your anger.
I can sense it.
Like that Coke can you have off camera is just like crushed.
That's his third one.
I need to be careful there, it's quite
I was
full.
going to say, now you've crushed it with liquid inside it.
I was careful, it's fine.
But as I said, busy show, plenty of news to talk about, and kicking things off with story number 1 of the week. Rumours rife, gentlemen, in the industry. Everyone under the sun is coming out and basically laying stories on us that Microsoft's Xbox exclusives and their approach to first-party games, their approach to potentially even hardware, is all up in the air and nobody knows, to a point where Phil Spencer had to come out this week and basically I mean, he didn't even reassure people. That's the weird thing. He came out and said, we've heard you, we're listening, we're going to make a business case event next week. So we should kind of caveat all of this that whatever we talk about is purely rumour and speculation. Now, we don't usually cover it on this show. However, the sources in which this information has came from is pretty much everyone in the industry who journalist-wise, who covers this. So you're talking The Verge, Tom Warren, Jason Schreier, like big names who pretty much leak all the news that we usually know about on a regular basis. This isn't random Twitter account that's got 200 followers. This is literally veterans of the industry who are saying, like, no, there's not smoke without fire here.
There's been some people out there completely losing the shit and completely extrapolating basically no news into, oh my god, Microsoft are going to destroy Xbox and never going to touch it again kind of stuff. It's like, probably not that. It's probably not that.
Probably calm yourself down a little bit. So again, to read the full tweet, we're listening and we hear you. We've been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned. So that's this week. That could happen any time. So this podcast goes live on a Monday on free feeds. Members get it early. Gamer Guild Heroes. 99p. Click join below. But I think it's worth getting into. We could all be wrong by the end of it, but I think we three will approach it from a leveled head perspective. We're not going to flip tables. We're not going to sell our Xboxes. We've riled Richie up, Rob. What have we done? We've created a monster. He's a can-crushing machine.
It's the caffeine.
It's the caffeine. But yeah, so realistically, this breaks down into a couple of pillars that I'd like to get into, and I think the biggest shift that comes from this is, reading from the Verge and Eurogamer combined, Microsoft is mulling over Xbox exclusive potentially no longer staying exclusive. So the rumours are initially Starfield was going to go multi-platform to PlayStation 5. The exclusive Indiana Jones, which remember had a fantastic reveal less than 1 month ago at the Developer Direct, also might only be a time exclusive for as little as 6 months, is the rumour as well. So not even a full year.
But 6 months, I think, is a big period of time because with game sales, like when they first come out, they're going to have that massive spike and then it's going to trail off and it's going to be trickle away. And bear in mind, Game Pass, after that first 6 months, they're probably not expecting any huge, small sales apart from the steady trickle. So you might as well just have another spike when they launch just another platform.
Well, that's, I think, where we'll get into and break it down more. We've got Hi-Fi Rush, which we know there was data miners found literal cosmetic skins for Chai, the main character in the game, wearing Nintendo gear and wearing PlayStation branded gear. So that's almost like a shoe-in definitive, yes, that is happening, unless they suddenly walk it back. And then the long kind of one that keeps chipping away is Sea of Thieves, is also looking for a boost in its audience by going multi-platform as well. Now, I think all things said and done, we should remember that Microsoft do have, now owners of Activision Blizzard King, they have multiple franchises that span across multiple platforms. We had it already in Minecraft. That's been going for many, many years. No one bats an eyelid. New launches into that world like Legends, which we played on the channel probably this time last year, actually, not too far off, which is mad to say that it was almost last year we played Minecraft Legends together. That's been going for a while. But then on the flip side, Call of Duty, Overwatch, like they now own some of the biggest franchises that are going to annually release across all platforms. And they have to do that legally because they agreed to it in a court case. And I think that's why maybe Phil hasn't came out this week and definitively said anything, because their lawyers must be still sieving through every public thing they put out now because of the backlash they could get from the court cases. So, focusing on the games first then, gents. Richie, I'll throw it over to you first because you mentioned it a little bit there at the start. In terms of timings with exclusivity, Microsoft, let's face it, Halo, Gears of War, not had the best of run recently with first party. They tried something different with Redfall, but Halo...
The problem is they didn't really try something different with Redfall.
They're stagnating a little bit. So in terms of exclusives, I think the biggest thing that irks gamers up, if you've bought into this ecosystem, you've bought into this brand, to then suddenly be told, like, oh, it's actually going to go elsewhere, I can see why people get defensive over it. However, what's your take on exclusives eventually going multi-platform? Maybe not at launch, but several months, a year later or something.
Honestly, I'm just generally in favour of it because I'm not involved in console wars. I'm not one of these people who go, oh God, Microsoft are going to put their games on PlayStation. I am done with Xbox forever. Sell my Xbox, which I have seen people online take that approach, and it's just kind of pathetic, to be honest. And I think exclusives do sell consoles and are a huge part of the industry. I know a lot of people don't like them, and ideally, I think the ideal situation is play whatever game you want to play, wherever you want to play it. That would be like utopian, and this is kind of a step in that direction. It's like, especially with timed exclusivity, it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to lock it to Xbox / PC for 6 months. Then after that, we're going to open it up to go and move over to PlayStation, Nintendo, or whatever. After, Microsoft in this case would be double dipping in terms of sales, because say Indiana Jones, for example, if that assuming that is a great game that we're hoping it is, comes out, sells well on Xbox, does well on Game Pass, then the sales fall off probably after a few months. Then it goes to PlayStation. All the PlayStation fans who only have a PlayStation are now buying that game as well because they've heard great things and not been able to play it, and now they are. So in terms of Microsoft, in terms of the money, I can only really see it as a positive. And with the timed exclusivity, I don't think it's going to impact too much sales of the Xbox console. Especially as well, I've said for a long time, I think Microsoft eventually moving away from a physical console.
Yeah, it goes back to Microsoft's heritage, and I think one thing we always forget is like Microsoft. They are predominantly and always have been a software company first and foremost. They make them millions and billions in things like Office and programs that run for businesses in the back end. Rob, you're always our kind of business guy we go to. In terms of an approach from Microsoft for this, it makes business sense, right? You get your money, and then you get more money, and then you put it out to more platforms, so more people have eyes on it. And we've said with their ecosystem, we've said many, many times, multiple screens. Play it on a Samsung. You don't need a console. Play it through the cloud. You don't need a console. Play it on PC. You don't need a console. So is it any surprise that their games are going somewhere where the console isn't the be-all, end-all?
I think it makes sense for Microsoft, and it's actually it leans into their area of like comfortable business, really, doesn't it? Because if you look at the history of Microsoft hardware, like fair enough, during the early kind of 2000s, they made keyboards and they made like a bunch of peripherals or whatever. Windows Phone didn't go anywhere really. Like the Surface, it has its following, but it's not making waves, like kind of some of the competitors. Like the only real consistent success in hardware was the Xbox and Xbox 360. Like since then,
I ain't using a Zoom.
No, right? Like
I am.
Of course,
like like since the Xbox 360, you can make an argument that every other Xbox has struggled. Like even the X and the S. Like
I don't think they've struggled. They just haven't done as well as PlayStation or Nintendo.
Like in the context
that's
of
not the I don't yeah.
In the context of three competitors, that's like three main competitors. That's struggling, I'd say.
I'd say that they're in third place, but the reason I don't think they're struggling because I don't like the word struggling because that implies that they're losing money.
Yeah, they still make millions
and
millions and millions.
Yeah.
They're just, I mean, Phil admitted it, right? They said they're in third place. They lost the digital generation when everyone moved over to their digital libraries. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right, Rob. Like, 360. Remember, at the end of the day, PlayStation 3 outsold 360 in the end of the race for that generation. Like, people forget that. So they haven't actually technically on paper won one in terms of sales. They won a lot of goodwill. They had a lot of phenomenal titles, and 360, in a lot of people's eyes, mine included, did win, quote unquote, that generation. But then since then, the one just botched that launch so poorly. They've been fighting it back ever since. So in terms of hardware, they're selling less and less. And this week the report came out that globally, PlayStation's outselling Xbox Series X and S 2-1.
Yeah,
I'd even argue back in the 360 era, the reason the 360 base seems to have won that generation, even though the numbers don't stack up nowadays, is because of the service that Microsoft were providing rather than the console. Online multiplayer at the time was by far better on Xbox than it was on PlayStation or anywhere else, apart from PC.
Yeah, and I guess as well, you have to appreciate how difficult selling a physical product is versus hardware. Like, you have to design the entire thing, you have to manufacture fucking millions of them, and then you have to get them to shops, you have to get them to your online store, then you'll have loads left over.
Your supply chain as well.
Yeah, and you'll have loads left over which you then need to clear because it costs too much to store them. So it's cheaper to give them away for next to nothing than it is to keep them in storage. And honestly, it's a headache that I'm not surprised a software company might not want to deal with, even one as big as Microsoft. So considering the way the market's going towards more digital, less physical, it makes sense for Microsoft. And there's a nostalgia part of me that says, it would be very nice to have a box to play games on, just because I've had an Xbox 360, but I can't.
But the box could just be a cloud streaming box.
Stick
that we know they have worked on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Project Keystone was a thing that still presumably is in the background and will cost a lot less to distribute and such. In terms of the scope to what you guys were mentioning about exclusives, though, I think they serve a purpose 100%. We know that they do. And I think Microsoft have been cracking that whip, no pun intended, but for Indiana Jones and other games for a long time now, and they've not quite struck gold with it still. We've got this
quality doesn't feel quite there for first party.
And how many years in a row do they keep trying that before it's right, we're just throwing hundreds and hundreds of millions at this, and for whatever reason the creative talent is not at Xbox Studios. They've brought Bethesda in, which hopefully should come with tons of talent there. They've now brought Activision in as well, and Blizzard and King, which should come, in theory, with loads of talent. But it's not. The problem with talent and creativity is it has to be nurtured. You can't just buy it in. It's not something you can just up and move.
You look at Starfield, and when I talk about quality, it doesn't feel like Bethesda have stepped up in quality in the last generation. It feels like things are looking a bit prettier and run better, but compared to how something like Naughty Dog are producing something like The Last of Us, the quality is just night and day. It's just they're not operating on the same level. I mean, Starfield is a lot bigger than The Last of Us, but for a first party title, it's not showcasing your hardware at its absolute pinnacle of what it can do. And that, I think, is one of the issues with the first parties. They just fall a bit, they feel a little bit lackluster.
Well, that's it. They're almost like their identity isn't what they'd hoped it would be. But then this goes back to, if we take a step back and analyse the industry, who says you have to have a box? We're all just going off what the pretense has been set for decades now. It's you have your box, you buy your game, done. It's the world isn't like that anymore. No other industry is like this anymore still. Music, TV, film, it's all totally different. And I understand when, if you've been in this ecosystem for 20 odd years now and you've spent hundreds and hundreds and you've got a massive library, you would have that resilience. And I would be exactly the same if PlayStation did it. But just like with my Spotify, just like with my Netflix, just like with streaming, eventually you kind of just come to accept that having everything just digitally streamed to you as part of a monthly subscription, it's cheaper per month, it's cheaper over the course of the year, you're getting more content. How many times, Richie, if we said Xbox Game Pass is the best value in gaming, like hands down,
100%.
hands down. And a lot of people have came to terms with that, and we've joked about it. I think a couple of weeks ago we reported on the show that PS4 games sold more physical games last year than Xbox did, and that's because no one's buying games. Why would you, when you've got it as part of a subscription? Why would you own an Xbox and buy a £70 title when it's just there, day one included? So then the more years that pass and that goes on, the more power Game Pass gets, and the less the normal traditional business structure matters. So I think Microsoft are just ready to take that leap and say, you know what, we're in third place, the ducks are all in a row, let's go multi-platform, and like you said, Richie, double dip and make the money off Game Pass, but then also we're making 70 quid everywhere else.
Do we go first place in terms of the service and just get rid of the box, which we're in third place? But I also think this comes into a lot of the arguments we've had over the years for cloud gaming, where I think there's going to be a generational shift. We are part of a generation that is used to having a box underneath the television. Mm-hmm. That is how gaming has been for us. Or if you're a PC gamer, you have a box which is attached to a monitor, which is effectively a television. There's a box, there's a controller of some description, and then there's a monitor. How many kids now approach the game is literally weird contortionist shit with your fingers as you're playing touchscreen on a phone, and that is what gaming is to a lot of kids nowadays. Yeah,
it's barrier to entry, isn't it? It's like they've grown up playing Fortnite on anything and everything, so
on touchscreen as well, even without a controller. So it's like, if that is, as much as I hate touchscreen controls, unless they're like direct press the thing and the thing happens, not a control emulation. That is, unfortunately, the way things are going, I think, as kids are just playing more and more on the phones. So they're wanting these. You look what Apple are doing. They're clearly tapping into that part of the market. I think Xbox are looking at it going, well, how many kids actually want an Xbox underneath the TV? There might even be a decline in TVs in kids' bedrooms coming because people are just using tablets and phones and stuff all the time.
Absolutely. So it does... Go on,
one final thing we haven't considered as well. How much easier does this make Microsoft's life if they want to buy more big studios and big franchises? If they can just say to every regulator, oh no, like, well, obviously this competition debacle which we had, like with ABK, like that's such an easy argument to overcome now. Is it just a case of going to hoover up more studios all the time?
Well, I mean, you'd like to think they've got enough. They are. They are in the world. They're the biggest publisher right now. Now they have ABK. They must be hands down the biggest publisher of games on the planet.
I think they need to work on elevating the studios they currently have rather than acquiring more. Because otherwise, it's going to have.
It looks good for the share price, though.
It does, yeah.
But
when as people stop buying the games, like if Starfield did well in terms of sales, if that comes to PlayStation and just flops, that doesn't look good for your share price.
Not for
I don't think it will flop, but
yeah.
But then this is where the catalogue would back it up. So, like, yes, you might have a flop in there, but you still have everyone keeping the subscription because of the rest of the library. So it's almost like the flagship new games that launch are there to bring in new subscribers.
They've got quantity down. They need the quality.
Exactly. And again, if they start eventually getting... again, it's a long game, this. If we're talking a decade's time when Call of Duty can start going into Game Pass and stuff... It does make people start thinking. We've said it many times. We've said it with the cloud gaming shows we used to do. But realistically, if you've got Game Pass and they're giving you that title and it's a la carte available elsewhere, you would start to question it, right? So if it happened in the last year, I want to play Starfield. Okay, I don't want to spend £70 on it, so I will spend £70. Sorry, forget Game Pass. I'll get it on PlayStation, for example. And then the next big game comes out and says it's Indiana Jones. Or it's on Game Pass day one, or it's £70 on PlayStation. I go, okay, I still kind of want to play it on PlayStation. Eventually, that dam must break where you go, why the hell am I paying £70 for these titles? Call of Duty's out, but it's on Game Pass. And I do feel like in the long term, and as you said, Richie, with younger generations coming through, they would rather pay £12 a month and get all them same things rather than dropping £70 every quarter or something for the exact same thing. And that's, I think, where PlayStation start to potentially lose their footing.
I'm an advocate for this with Ubisoft Plus. I would rather pick up Ubisoft Plus for a month or two to play, say, Assassin's Creed Red then buy the game, because I don't necessarily care about keeping the game in my library that much anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm probably if I don't want to drop like 70 quid on a physical copy, a month or two of Ubisoft Plus is cheaper than that, and it gives me access to the entire Ubisoft library as well.
Yeah.
So if you don't need to, I must keep my game. I want to put it on the shelf and display.
Yeah.
The subscription services, if you're willing to just activate it when you want to play certain titles, can be good. The downside is if Ubisoft decide to take off titles, then they're gone. You don't have access to it anymore.
Yeah.
But as long as physical copies still exist as well, you'll be able to pick one up cheap on Amazon later down the line. So, yeah. It's
certainly an interesting one. One of the ones I wanted to touch on with games, to throw it over to you, Rob, is Game Pass. We don't really know how much money it makes, but there's always that through line that I always think about with these exclusivity deals, that there has to be limitations on it. So, for example, we know Indiana Jones is one of the biggest titles in the lineup for Xbox. Mm-hmm. We know Blade is a massive one that they announced as well, and they've been very coy over what the exclusivity is, what the deal is. And the way I look at it is, because it's coming from Disney and Lucasfilm, my concern from Microsoft part would be, if they're going to make a deal with Xbox, they want some money back in return. And Microsoft go, well, it's gone on a Game Pass. So what money are they making a la carte other than Game Pass subscriptions? So how can they turn to Disney and say, we can guarantee you 200 million profit? Because they can't, because it's on Game Pass. Yeah. So all they have is Game Pass numbers in terms of revenue. Because I can't imagine many people are going to buy it a la carte when it's there on Game Pass.
This is the thing. I would love to see the sales figures based on I'd love to see the split between like a game like Starfield, how many people bought it versus how many people Game Pass. It must be minimal, right? Like, I can't see a reason why it wouldn't be minimal.
Why would you?
But how many people playing Starfield on PC? I think
there's
more people playing Starfield PC than...
Yeah, but there's PC on Game Pass as well.
For a bit.
PC Game Pass, it's free on there too. So
yeah, but I don't think PC Game Pass does as well as console Game Pass.
Oh, it definitely doesn't, because the market.
I think there's because I think when people go to PC, it's almost like hardcore PC players. Steam. They don't seem to realise Game Pass is there. Because when I've talked to my brother about it, it's like, you could just get that on Game Pass. Like, and he'll drop like 70 quid on the game when it's like it's there.
But from a licensing standpoint, I don't think Xbox making enough cash in hand money to turn around to Disney and say, we can guarantee you profit on licensing us this IP, which is why I think Indiana Jones and Blade especially, they won't be permanently exclusive, because Disney will be like, well, what if it goes PlayStation after 6 months? We can get $70 a pop from each unit sold elsewhere. And realistically, look at the numbers. There's more than double PlayStation 5s out in the wild. So Disney would be like holding back their own IP and their business sales because of that. We saw the Insomniac leaks. I think Disney wanted something like 200 million profit per Spider-Man launch. And if the numbers are the same and they're going to Microsoft with a similar deal, and Microsoft go, well, we only have Game Pass numbers to go off, Disney go, well, how does that make us money? Why would we give you one of our biggest IPs if you can't guarantee us that return? Which, at that point, Microsoft have to spend more money to convince Disney. And then this is where Game Pass just becomes a sunken cost. And this is back to our biggest point of, if they can double dip, that would alleviate the whole thing. You want to play it day one? Great, it's on Game Pass. But if you hang fire, we can still get our money from gamers buying it 6 months later, 1 year later, on other platforms, Switch, PlayStation, etc.
I'd imagine like the deal will be structured in like quite an interesting way, where it's probably so much money up front, then probably so much percentage, probably quite a high percentage of box sales, and a high percentage of Game Pass sales up until they hit a certain threshold, then them numbers will probably decrease to be in Microsoft's favour to tick over. Let's say that 200 million. Let's say it's 100 million up front, then the over 100 million is going 50 up till we get 50 million from box sales, 50 million from Game Pass. We're going to take 70% of the revenue. Once we hit that, then it's going to drop down to maybe 20% and just tick over. There'd be some sort of structuring like that. I mean, their numbers off the top of my I've pull out my arse, but
well, like back on the concept of, I don't see a strong argument as to why they wouldn't release after like 6 months, like on different platforms. I can't see. Like it helps Game Pass in the initial like period. Potentially builds up a player base that makes the game more appealing.
They've clearly given up on what Sony and Nintendo are trying to do and going, we're going to keep everything to ourselves, so you have to come to us to play out these titles. Microsoft have been, for the last few years, this is not a new thing, we've been quite more relaxed about the whole play anywhere mantra.
Yeah.
So it's like, as long as they're making money and Xbox is healthy, they don't really seem to care that much if you're playing on Xbox or on PC, or even things like you mentioned Minecraft earlier, Chris. I mean, that's a grandfathered deal, but they don't seem to have any issue with that continuing.
Yep. And then that goes back to the wider picture. It's like, why should they care? It's a business. They're not there to appease all these nerdy gamers in the basement going like, oh, I've owned several of these. It's not fair.
They don't care about the console wars.
They make money. And again, the wars are only something that, as fans, we've made ourselves because of the competitive nature of video games. But realistically, take a step back, look at it from a different lens. It's like, if you want to play Indiana Jones on your Xbox day one, do it. If you want to play it on your PS5, you'll have to wait 6 months. Do it. Nobody loses out. Nobody gets hurt. If you want to play it early, go buy yourself an Xbox. If you have some patience, play it 6 months later or a year later. Like, I get where the frustrations come from, but at the same time, nobody dies. Nobody can't play anything in the long run. So just, like I said, bit of patience, and it's the same thing. But being owned by Microsoft, gaming is not the be-all, end-all for them. They have, like, Phil Spencer has bosses above him who are saying, like, Phil, you're hemorrhaging money on this Game Pass thing. What's the deal with it? And he's like, oh, it's going to come to fruition soon. We've got it lined up so we get a first-party game every quarter. That's going to boost subscriber numbers. But when we look at the other industries, look at TV, how much it's plateaued now. And the saturation is just ridiculous. And they're putting fees up. It's getting to that scary point where, like, everyone's just fed up of subscriptions, right? Full stop. And Microsoft are the only real ones to be doing it in gaming. So even though they're in third place, they're in first place in terms of that model. And if the whole industry pivots to that over the next decade or so, they're setting themselves up for long-term success. But I do wonder if the leadership at Microsoft, not Xbox, Microsoft, are pulling the other way and starting to go like, look, stop wasting money on R&D, stop wasting money on hardware. If we can double dip and make triple the profits back, why aren't we doing it? And then, as much as Phil Spencer and his team want to argue and say it's important we have exclusives, but then Microsoft go, but what if we just go 6 months and then we make another 100 million off PS5 or another 100 million off Hi-Fi Rush on Switch? From a business point of view, you can't argue against that. If your bosses are saying, will it make us more money? Yes. Then do it, Phil. And he's like, it means more to me and the brand. And they go, we don't care. It makes money. The board want more money. The greed.
The last thing I really want to say on this topic is I feel like Microsoft are currently experimenting with the business model at the moment. They're trying a few things out and see what works. And I think that's what's rattled a lot of people on the internet, because people on the internet just get rattled over anything. So,
and something I probably want to touch on as well and look into is leadership, because at the end of the day, these are human beings and they're working to bring us the best entertainment. Yes, well, some of them might be robots. We're not sure how good AI or Bing is over at Microsoft. Bethesda, Starfield, like, seemingly when they were brought into the fold, they had issues already. I think there's emails that leaked through the FTC court case that said, like, why the hell are our games not going multi-platform, but others are? And I think, was it Todd Howard or it was one of the people at Bethesda, Pete Hines maybe? And there was, like, his emails linked where he was not happy, and he was like, why is one exclusive and one isn't? And I think it was about predominantly Starfield, because they'd worked on a PS5 version for many, many years. And you got to remember, Microsoft absorbing these companies, just because you're bought by a company, you don't have to be happy about it. And I can imagine there's a lot of leadership at these other companies, Activision included probably now, who are now being brought into this Microsoft world. There's layoffs, there's consolidation. Your colleagues who you've worked with for decades are no longer here anymore. And like we said, back to that creative vision and that kind of shared interest, I'd imagine there's a lot of questions being asked about just, like, the direction of things, leadership, who's in charge, who has the say on what. Like, who's to say, Hi-Fi Rush has gone Nintendo Switch, why does that get to go, but Halo has to stay? Why does Gears get to go, but Starfield gets to move? Like, and you got to imagine at one point you're pitting your studios against each other, saying, well, why is one prioritized over the other for certain things like exclusivity? And I think it's going to cause ruptures and problems where Big Daddy Microsoft has to step in and say, right, this is the rule, this is what applies to exclusives, this is what doesn't apply to exclusives. Our first party studios, they're fine, they're first party. Halo and Gears never gone, but Bethesda titles, they go multi-plat. If Elder Scrolls doesn't come to PS5, I'll be shocked.
It's having your business strategy very crystal clear, and having every studio who's working under you understand where the title they're currently working on and their back catalogue falls within that business plan.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an older title, might just go, all the titles from Xbox One and before can just move over to other consoles if someone's willing to pay the money to port them. That might be the line. You just go, if someone's willing to port, whether it's your studio, it comes out of your budget, or whether Sony go, we really want to get the Master Chief Collection over here, and Sony go, Microsoft, here's a bag of cash, we'll do with the port. It's like, crack on. It might be that kind of deal where AAA, like these tentpole titles that they were bringing out, like in Indiana Jones, like Starfield, like unfortunately Redfall, maybe they are, you know what, they are locked to Xbox and PC for 6 months, and then we'll revise it on a game-by-game basis.
And this is where I think the problem with Microsoft and their biggest issue they've had is their own communication's been so poor for so long now. They keep missing beats and they keep being reactive rather than proactive. And this is another one, like scrambling together to get a business event together for next week. But what is that? Like those lines in the sand need to be drawn of like, what are the rules for us as a consumer, as an Xbox fan? I need to know what's coming and going where. Like, stop. It can't be on a case by case basis. If like I'm thinking ahead for if I'm going to buy the next console or not.
Mm-hmm.
2023 was not a good year for Microsoft, I don't think, in terms of Xbox. None of their first parties really landed the way they wanted to. Starfield done well, but it generally looked at, in hindsight, with fairly mixed reviews. I think it sold well, but it's not the massive era-defining game that everyone was kind of hoping it would.
It's largely been forgotten.
It has, yeah. And is also dominated by the ABK deal, which probably took a lot of time and effort away from the management of Xbox.
You're getting dragged.
So now
in.
that is largely over and done with. There's still a few things ticking away in the background, but it's the higher ups are not so focused on that. They can refocus on what Xbox is, I think, going forward.
Yeah.
Dedicate the time with the studios, improve the quality and potentially quantity of games that are coming out. What is working for Microsoft? What isn't? How does ABK go into that? I think they're in that kind of reconsolidation phase after a difficult couple of years.
Yeah. And we've got to remember as well, like, they massively overpaid for ABK. Like, if we're completely honest, like, for what Sony paid for Insomniac, what they paid for Bethesda, for the price to ramp up to 68.7 billion, that means effectively, even at
But in 10 years' time, are you saying the same thing?
It's not even 10 years. I was listening to another show where they crunched the numbers and they said, based on Call of Duty's kind of revenue and profits, they would need to have it for 35 years before the 10 back the money that's spent on it. And that's hoping that Call of Duty keeps up its current rate for the next 3 decades plus. Which makes you think, again, no wonder Big Daddy Microsoft step in and go, money, guys, you're spending a lot of it. Like, what is the plan here? And I guess to bring this conversation
that
to...
deal, Microsoft's higher-ups were being involved with just Xbox.
Of course. Yeah. You don't just sign a blank check and give it to Phil Spencer and say, like, go buy whoever you want. But speaking of signing checks to Phil Spencer then, gents, he's scrambling to do a business event next week to tell us about the future of Xbox and its direction. Is there a chance this is the end for Phil Spencer? Like, not in a he wants to leave kind of way, but I feel like if his vision for Xbox and exclusives and Game Pass isn't being seen through because Big Daddy Microsoft come in and say, look, Hi-Fi Rush is going over here, Starfield can go PS5, Indiana Jones is only 6 months. At what point is your leadership being so undermined by the powers above that you go like, I can't do this anymore? Because his faith with the fans is going to diminish every single time he has to come out and apologise like this. We've seen it happen over the last year. And I worry that, and not worry for Phil, he's a bloody millionaire probably at this point. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if whatever business event happens next week, I could see him, Sarah Bond, Matt Booty, like his leadership just go like, you know what? Like, we did our best from the failure of what was the Xbox. Remember, Phil took over after the failure of Xbox One. And I think he's done a lot of good, solid work to get Xbox back to a solid place it is now. Even though it's still in third, still making money for Microsoft. But I just do think there's a point where he's like, you know what? No one's listening to me. We can't see this vision through. The powers that be keep saying that we have to go in a different direction. That's not my view for Xbox. And leadership change happens. Like, people move on from companies all the time. Like, positive, like, great, impactful people, because there's shareholders and people who apparently have better business acumen than you do, who can help influence things. And I think once your influence is undermined, you must start to question it. You got Bethesda at your heels, all these new studios with other leadership issues and internal. Look at Activision Blizzard King with all the sexual problems that keep happening over there, and that's now all brought in out. All the layoffs that just happened. You must just think like, fuck this. I'm out. I'm done. Like I did my hardest. Xbox can be what it wants to be without me. Go have fun.
You're making a big assumption that whatever the next kind of phase of Xbox's vision is going to be isn't aligned with Phil Spencer's. You mentioned he took over after Xbox One. Mm-hmm. He effectively oversaw Game Pass becoming what it is. This could be just the next phase and his initial pitch to Microsoft's board of why he should be leading it. So it does depend. I think it could be you know what, we're doubling down on your vision because it seems to be working. We're going the right direction. We're not where we want to be. The console's dying out, but that might have been kind of Phil's part of his pitch initially to get Game Pass up and running. Or it could be a case of, you know what, we've got the Microsoft higher ups to decide that Xbox needs to go in a completely different direction. Phil and the current leadership, and they're going, that's not how we see it should go, and then maybe they just amicably move on from each other. Yeah.
I mean,
it could go either way.
I think the difference is, like, people in the gaming community see Phil Spencer as, like, you know...
He's a gamer.
Yeah, they see him as, like, a personality of Microsoft and of Xbox. Mm-hmm. Like, for Phil Spencer, this is a job.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like, speaking from personal experience, like when you have to go and like deliver consistently bad news to people of all different like varieties, like redundancies, or this game fucking binned it on launch and everyone's laughing at us, like that gets you down, man. And like as someone who's like, it feels like forced to wake up every morning and like just deal more shitty bad news out of it. I can completely see him just kind of not throwing in the towel, but thinking I can do something else which will make me happier. And
if I taken this as far as it goes, is what I'm currently doing worth the pain? Is where the destination worth the pain it is to get there?
Yeah.
Or is this now on the right tracks and all I need to do is step aside and let someone else who's got a bit more fight left in them?
Yeah.
It could just be that. I believe we're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's going to be a struggle to get there, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
But I don't maybe want to do the fight myself. I'll hold on until we find the right replacement. It could be a lot of things.
Yeah. But it's an interesting one to think, like, just after next week, what we'll know about it. But I think you're right in a lot of senses there. Like, it's a hard job to have, and being, I think, a front-facing figure. We saw, like, Jim Ryan, remember, he's gone from PlayStation as well. Their heads moved on. Mm-hmm. And he was never really beloved because he wasn't a gamer. He was a businessman first and foremost. But it's like, Phil, I think, gets a little bit of a pass because he does come across as, like, a gamer. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that doesn't make money. Just because you're like relatable and you can talk to people about playing Baldur's Gate and stuff doesn't mean that you're making the right business decisions. So it's an interesting one to see. All I do hope is whatever happens, don't replace him with Phil Harrison. Xbox, do not replace him with Phil Harrison. We've seen he's done it everywhere else now. Don't bring him in to Microsoft and Xbox again. Although he was already there at one point, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
But joke,
probably doing the Xbox One era.
Yeah, maybe he's the last one to steer the ship. But jokes aside, it's going to be a very interesting week for Microsoft. We'd love to hear our audience's thoughts and views on this one. I think to round out this story, just a quick little touch point, gents. If you were to see Xbox titles, exclusives, leave and move over to our precious PS5s and our Nintendo Switches and other devices potentially, what franchises would you like to see most of all? Richie, we've been playing through Halo 1 and 2. Would you like to round out the Master Chief Collection with some Platinum trophies over on your PS5? Or is there another franchise that jumps out like actually I'd rather play blank?
Well, I think just resuming all the Bethesda stuff, like there's a whole ZeniMax thing going over to PlayStation. I think I'd like to see that. Although I still associate them all with PC myself. I was going to play Starfield on PC if my PC could run it, and it couldn't. Hellblade, recently played Hellblade 1. I found that was fantastic. I think that would do very well on PlayStation.
Got an existing user base as well with the first one.
Yeah. I've never played Gears, so I don't really know. I've not played a modern Halo, so I can't really say that. The old games could work. It'd be an interesting thing, but I don't know.
It's an interesting proposition, isn't it, to look back at like the legacy library and think like, well, what would actually do well? Anything jump out for you, Rob?
Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah. already there, but yeah.
It has to be Hellblade for me. I'd love to see how that would look on PlayStation hardware. Out of all the things that Microsoft are doing in the game space, I feel like that one has the legs for more kind of games. Which is like the actual sad thing is, I think about Xbox Live and I'm like, oh, what would I love to see on PlayStation? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, like
the list isn't great, right?
No,
like that's what we've been saying all along about exclusives.
Like, do I want to see like another mid-level Gears of War title? Probably not. Do I want to see another?
The key franchises feel. I felt for a long time. The key franchises feel very rooted in the Xbox 360 era.
Yeah, there's not much I want to see more of.
Yeah.
Well, that generation PlayStation won out in. They invested a lot of money in new IP. We saw Horizon, we saw Ghost of Tsushima like launch off the back of that. Whereas Xbox just put out another Halo, another Gears of War. Like, arguably, that the Xbox One generation, the only exclusive worth anything was Sunset Overdrive. And that was made by Insomniac, and they're owned by PlayStation now. They're making Marvel games for the next decade or so. But yeah, there was a Push Square article that did like a survey on PlayStation fans of what you would like to see. And in at number 1 was Gears of War, which I think would have been a third-person over-the-shoulder shooter. That fits.
Yeah.
If they brought like a Gears of War collection to PS5, I would be all over that. Absolutely. I think it does fit maybe the PlayStation style better than any other IP. Halo second. Indiana Jones, it's an unknown quantity, so I don't know why that will come in third. Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, put that under the ZeniMax banner though.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls in at 4. Forza Horizon in at 5, which again gives some competition with Gran Turismo. Like, yeah, why not? Fable in at 6. 7 for Starfield. I think Starfield will probably be the more relevant current one, I think, to get over there. Fallout, again, already exists. Marvel's Blade, unknown quantity, and then Hellblade in at number 10. So as far as PlayStation fans go, no surprise Gears and Halo are up there at the top. But yeah, Master Chief Collection, Gears of War Collection, I think they'd be great. And are we in an ironic place where because PS5 is outselling Xbox 2-1, they would make more sales on PS5?
Yeah, this is the reality you can't get away from, is that.
Or if you put the Master Chief Collection on Switch, like, you're telling me 120 million Nintendo Switches with the Master Chief Collection playing OG Halo 2 on the move portable with your friends. Imagine that. The adverts for the Switch when you see them on the rooftops in New York and they're playing with their mates. Bunch of 30-year-olds cracking out the Switch and playing Halo co-op versus mode.
Instead of playing Splatoon, they're playing Halo.
Absolutely. So it's such an interest. Again, from a business lens, it's mad to think they could probably make more money elsewhere. And I guess that sums up Microsoft's problem and Xbox's problem one for one. But we'll find out later on this week's Gentlemen. As I said, there's a business event being lined up, and everything we just spoke about could be absolute bullshit. But
probably is, yeah.
Probably is, yeah. The last hour of the podcast is complete. You've just wasted your time listening to this podcast so far. Listen to the rest, though.
Jokes on you. Good thing we've got some other news that's not related to Microsoft to talk about. Pivoting away, Disney announced, the Walt Disney Company had their earnings report. They usually do it every single year. They've announced a $1.5 billion US stake in Epic Games as it launches a multi-year partnership to create, and I quote, an expansive and open game world of entertainment in a connected universe via Fortnite. The new Unreal Engine-powered persistent universe will I've never even heard that word, interoperate with Fortnite to offer a multitude of opportunities for consumers to play, watch, shop, and engage with content, characters, and story from across Disney's vast portfolio. Explicit mentions of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and Avatar will help users to create their own stories and experience, expressing their fandom in a distinctly Disney way and share content with each other as they always have loved. Don't know what any of that really means, but they put out a trailer for it.
Fortnite into a metaverse.
It seems that way. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney said Disney was one of the first companies to believe in the potential of bringing their worlds to Fortnite, which is not wrong at all. We've seen Star Wars, we've seen Avengers, we've seen arguably every IP they already own appear. And you know what? I think it's some of the coolest stuff Fortnite's done. Remember when Thanos showed up in Fortnite and it was like one person would be Thanos and he would have the Infinity Gauntlet. He could just shit mix everyone else on that Battle Royale field, and it was only for a limited time. I thought that was fantastic. And again, if I was like a 12-year-old that would be, I would be all over that. The only reason I'm not is because I've kind of grown beyond that type of gameplay, and the way we play isn't befitting of that. But yeah, big stake, lots of investments. So that means like Epic is now half owned by Epic. Disney have a big share in it. Sony have a big share in it. And it's just these big, massive entertainment powerhouses basically running the world through Fortnite. Rob, throw it over to you. Multi-year collaboration, billions of dollars of investment. What does this look like? Are we talking like more Lego Fortnite inside Fortnite, where you get like essentially like a Disney Infinity, like but within Fortnite?
Yeah, this is what I took it to mean. Like maybe just like a deepening of the like the IP sharing with Fortnite, but it's hard to understand. It's kind of hard to understand what the hell Disney are doing at the moment. Like, I don't know, like they keep zigzagging in and out of gaming, and then they've just kind of jumped in again. Obviously, Disney aren't in the best place as a company at the moment, so I don't know. Maybe it's an idea to like diversify away from like the movies which aren't particularly doing well at the moment. I don't really know. It kind of came out of nowhere. And I can't see a logic behind it really.
Yeah, well, the trailer that they put out shows some concept art, which shows like essentially a multitude of like islands where there's like fake Disney cruise ships going on pretend tours. There's a cyberpunk world, like branded skyscrapers that say like Stark Towers there. There's the Death Star looming over. There's X-wings flying all over the place. There's essentially it's like Disney World with all its different lands, but in this virtual space. And I think back to your point, Rich, I think that is like their metaverse of like actually you can walk to the Disney Marvel section of this, and there's Marvel games within. It's almost like what Ubisoft try and do with this Assassin's Creed Infinity, where like you drop into the world of Fortnite and the Battle Royale's over there, but then if your little avatar character runs over there, there's a whole Star Wars area with 3 or 4 different Star Wars games within Fortnite.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than when you boot up Fortnite, rather than booting up a menu and picking a mode, you drop into a hub, and then you can go explore the hub, and then drop into a game from in the hub.
Yeah. And this is where I do genuinely think Fortnite, the synergy.
And Disney Plus is one of the things that you can just jump into.
You just go watch Disney Plus
film.
while sat there as your little avatar guy. Because we praised them, Richie, when we played Lego Fortnite. We dropped in, and my Stormtrooper character I'd bought on the Nintendo Switch version of Fortnite got made into a little Lego Stormtrooper character. So the skins I'd bought years prior were there in a Lego form inside the Lego Fortnite game. And it was like, that's just brilliant that I don't have to. I've not lost anything. It's only like one skin pack I probably paid like $150 for, but it was there. It existed in my little universe within that IP. And if they do this for whatever the future of video games looks like, if you were like a 12-year-old now and you spent 300 quid of your mum and dad's money on all these skins and characters and weapons and stuff, and you can bring them into whatever new thing comes out, it actually almost goes back to the Xbox thing of like Fortnite won the digital library generation of like in-game cosmetics, where if you spend that much money on packs and skins and stuff, and they will continue through to whatever the Epic's next release is, that kind of works, right? If you've got a Darth Vader skin and you go and play the Fortnite rocket racing game, and your Darth Vader skin transfers into a Darth Vader car, then you're like, oh cool, I've already got it, I own it, it's there, I'm keep playing this game because I've already invested so much real money and time into this world. The fact that it stays ever connected is, from a consumer standpoint, that's great, right? You don't have to start again.
Well, Fortnite's no longer a game; it's a platform, basically. You jump into Fortnite, and there's various different games in it. I think the Disney stuff is just going to expand the offerings. There'll be probably new game modes based around Fortnite. You might get Ewok Hunt in the Fortnite.
I was explaining the Ewok Hunt to Rob the other day.
I know you were.
Yeah. We should actually play Ewok Hunt one time. When Star Wars Day, May. Lock it in.
Yeah, May the 4th. So you might get stuff like that come in, these experiences, but again, I think you'll get Disney Plus in there, and it won't be like you're probably sat there looking through the eyes of a character. You'll probably just run over, got a Disney Plus. Avengers is playing over there. You run into that feature, you sit down, and then it just goes full screen or something like that. There'll be I think that's the kind of thing I can see doing is like, shop. So you might be able to buy physical goods by going into a Disney store within Fortnite, buy a thing, and it arrives at your house. I do think it is trying to be this kind of metaverse thing.
For 1.5 billion, though.
Yeah, but that's also buying into like shares into Epic, which that's the engines they produce, and revenue from Fortnite.
Yeah,
They'll be getting the stake
I think
back.
it's like Sony's stake, isn't it? It's like they own a chunk of it. So however Sony collaborate by putting Kratos and Nathan Drake and stuff into the game, it helps the game, but then in turn they get profit off the back of it. So it's almost like, it's how I joke with people who work in the like council or police or fire or NHS workers. It was like their taxes ironically pay themselves in a very, very small way. You're paying tax. It's almost like Disney are now paying themselves small percentage profit returns because they have a stake in this company that they're going to collaborate closer with. So,
and it's any game that like anyone buys from the Epic Games Store as well, Disney will get a small cut of that. So the 1.5 billion isn't just here's 1.5 billion to put our IP into Fortnite.
Yeah.
That money will probably be spent doing that, but Disney will be getting a return through the entirety of what Epic does as a corporation.
Mad. So much money. But then again, to talk about so much money, how crazy is it that $1.5 billion is still nothing compared to the 80s, whatever the Microsoft paid for ABK?
I know,
Like, it's not even close.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's clauses in there that the Disney arms of gaming now don't have to pay any royalties to Epic for the use of Unreal Engine. They just get free access. So any Disney game can be made on Unreal Engine, whether it's licensed or in-house, and don't have to pay them fees. There'd be stuff like that involved. That's probably why Sony have investment to get access to Unreal Engine, so that all their studios can have it without having to pay a huge licensing fees.
Looking at this concept art, it's just a shame it's not a real place I can go visit. Like, I love Disney World, but it's not quite as cool as this place looks.
Yeah.
Everything just like in its own full. Like, that was my biggest thing with the theme parks they fucked up with, is Star Wars Land was just like a small little area in one of the existing parks. It was like, that should have been a park unto itself, where as soon as you go through them gates, you are immersed in, if you go right, there's Endor in the snow area. They already have like the designated tundras ready.
They've got the biomes.
They've got them there ready to go. Yeah, there should be the Hoth area. There should be the Tatooine area, the canteens. But the canteen should be a full-on restaurant canteen experience, not like a little one in the corner that can only fit 50 people in at a time. But I digress. Big acquisitions, big moves. I don't think this investment either impacts their wider business dealings. So like Spider-Man and stuff, Wolverine, X-Men, EA's... Star Wars Jedi Survivor series. I think they keep making them deals the same. It just means Fortnite's going to have everything flung at it. You want a Honey I Shrunk the Kids avatar? You can have it. It's there. They're getting a reboot apparently, by the way. Don't know what they're going to do with it. Maybe Rick Moranis will come out of retirement and shrink everyone else. Moving on though, we've got some shorter news stories to round out this week's episode. We spoke about Helldivers too, so we won't go back into that. If they do get some praise reviews, we might loop back around to it. Foamstars, another title that launched in PlayStation Plus, which is arguably one of the reasons Helldivers maybe didn't go into PlayStation Plus this month, because they'd already had a deal with Square for a free shooter game to go in. And I think having two maybe would have split the divisions of players too much. Foamstar critic reviews, mid. Its Metacritic currently sits at 59. Screen Rant gave it a 70 out of 100. Push Square gave it a 7 out of 10. Eurogamer gave it a 6 out of 10. So it's kind of like sitting in that kind of middling area. Again, for those who don't know what Foamstars is, it's basically Splatoon from the Nintendo Switch, blatantly ripped off and put into a slightly different engine, and made more into a game show than it is traditionally in Splatoon with the little inkling characters. We might check this one out. I'm kind of easy on it. I'm not that like it's getting mixed reviews, but reading from Screen Rant, there's so much good to say about Foamstars with its quirky characters and cheerfully energized feel. While at launch the matches doesn't feel entirely balanced, that will even out over time, yet the microtransactions look as though they could only get worse. Push Square say Foamstars is a colourful, unique and entertaining shooter. The modes and characters on offer at launch are fun twists on genre staples, and the central foam mechanic is a playful addition with some potential for strategy. It's light-hearted, fast-paced fun with plenty of style, while the steep microtransactions and the so-so co-op missions keep it from being great. I'm going to throw it over to Richie, because the fact that microtransactions was mentioned so many times, I can feel that can getting crushed more in his hand. He's going to spill it all over his computer at some point. Foamstars, Richie, you're the biggest fan out of the three of us.
Apparently.
What's your...
With the microtransactions, I don't actually hate microtransactions. It depends how they're implemented. If it's just pure cosmetic stuff, I couldn't care less. Like, if you want to make your character look different and you want to pay £400 to do it, that's on you. As long as it doesn't impact gameplay. It's when microtransactions impact gameplay I have issue. And so we'd have to, because none of the review, like the summary reviews, kind of mention how the microtransactions kind of impacts it. They just kind of suggest that the microtransactions could be problematic.
Yeah.
So it's yet to be. I think it's a yet to be seen. But the gameplay just kind of seeming to be just okay from what they're offering. It's like, no, everyone's saying, yeah, it's kind of fine, it's entertaining, it's a slight twist on the genre, but it doesn't seem like anyone is kind of going, oh, it's actually got a really cool concept of how it plays. It is a bit of a Splatoon clone, but it does it well. It's unfortunate about the microtransactions. It's going, yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah,
I think this is going to be dead in a year.
Yeah, I
just
agree. It's already
can't see it going anywhere.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think it's probably great for a weekend with your mates, but the microtransactions alone. So the fact that nearly every review mentions it seems to be undermining the fun to be had a little bit. But less about that said, the better. Moving on, Assassin's Creed Red and Star Wars Outlaws look like they're on track for this year. We know Assassin's Creed Red, which is the feudal Japan style AC game, it's been in the works for quite some time, and Star Wars Outlaws, which is again the one from Massive, who are the Division team. Yusuke Mods came out as part of an earnings report for Ubisoft and basically clarified that they both should be set to launch by the time the next financial year ends, which is March 2025, meaning we should see it. If they target their usual releases, they've been quite open with saying Outlaws is still targeted for 2024. We saw that the last trailer. And in terms of Assassin's Creed, I don't think we've ever had an Assassin's Creed release in the springtime. It's always been a November, October launch in terms of Christmas, and I can't see them missing that cadence for this one, especially because Red seemingly is like it's what people have been asking for a decade plus now from Assassin's Creed, is take us to Japan. And I think between you and me and Richie, Ubisoft, Ghost of Tsushima basically just elevated that to be like, how have they not done this already? They've gone everywhere through history. How have they not been to Japan? It seems to fit fine. Out of the two of them, though, are Ubisoft at risk now of doing what they've done before and just bring these games out so close together that they cannibalise each other? They're two big, massive AAA open-world games with a massive franchise behind them. Do Ubisoft step on a rake again with this one, Rob?
I'm not sure. I think the franchise is especially the Star Wars franchise works to its own rules to a degree. So I don't think it would be as impactful if it was just a generic title. Well, it's not fair to say generic, but it depends. I think they'll both do well. Both very different styles of genre and setting, I guess. We'll have to see. But I think I'm most looking forward to Star Wars, to be honest.
Star Wars. It's such an interesting one. I'm totally sold on both of them. So my panic would be if they do come out so close to each other. I know Assassin's Creed is 100 plus hours. Outlaws is possibly going to be 50 upwards, and I want to play both of them. So,
but you know, Assassin's Creed will be on sale 60% off in 3 months.
That is true. Yeah, patience is a virtue. Richie, you're a kind of lapsed fan of Assassin's Creed, but you're also a big Star Wars fan. Where's your needle sit with the two of these ones?
I'm not sold on either.
Really? Wow.
I'm not. The reason I'm not sold is because it's Ubisoft. I just don't think the games they produce and that it being that particularly interesting in recent years. I really, really want Ubisoft to kind of hit the pinnacle of gaming again. But in recent years, pretty much since we've started this podcast, I've felt fairly consistently that Ubisoft just don't care that much about trying to get the best quality of game they can, as long as they get the game off the production line and make a decent wad of cash, more so than other studios. I know every studio kind of wants to make money, but I don't know, there's something about the Ubisoft games that I always find just disappointing. And I think it's because they're always good, but I know they could be better. So I'm very much with Ubisoft titles, just in a perpetual state of wait for reviews.
If you had to pick one right now, what would you go for?
Star Wars.
Interesting.
Assassin's Creed, I think, has been done to death. As much as Red would be the one I'd be most interested in terms of if I had to come up with a concept for an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
I was hoping Mirage would be the one to kind of elevate Assassin's Creed, and based on everything I've heard anyone talk about, it just seems to be meh. Just a bit underwhelming.
Mirage was underwhelming for me. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's very forgettable.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I'm just
problem.
conditioned for the open world ones now. Like, I loved Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, so now I think Mirage for me was like it was like a step back in time, but I didn't get the nostalgia step back in time. I missed the open world mechanics a bit more, so it's an interesting one.
Other people I've talked to just said the combat just feels clunky and dated and stuff. It's like, but it was meant to be like going back to the old style in terms of how the game is structured in terms of more assassination-y stuff, but with a modern polish, and it just feels to not had the modern polish.
Yeah.
And that is my concern with Ubisoft games.
Well, hopefully they'll set the ship right.
Yeah.
Ironically, they've had a great start with Prince of Persia. That renewed phenomenally. Everyone I talk about it
looks
loves
incredibly polished.
Yeah. And then, like I said, we've got a pretty stacked back end of the year. If we hear that, they could have a great free to play in the middle if they finally get around to releasing the Division Heartlands, whatever the hell that is. However, there's the one black spot on the horizon which is imminent, gentlemen, and that is Skull and Bones is set for release next week. And these Game Monitors came out as part of that same investors call and said that actually Skull and Bones, we're going to stand by our £70 price point because it is a quadruple A live service game. And I think on the imminent release of this game, and it's beta that's gone live now and everything carries over from that one. And there was a whole IGN video, it was like a 20-minute series of like the history of Skull and Bones, and it's like the turmoil it's gone through to launch and how many different art directors it's had and the shifts over, and it's took a decade. Reading from the quote, Guillemot said, you will see that Skull and Bones is a full-fledged game. It's a very big game. We feel like people will really see how vast and complete that game is. So it's a really full AAA, quadruple A game that will deliver in the long run. I hate to break it to you, Yves, but you're wrong. It's the multi-million-dollar
Trump quote, that. Like, it sounds like something Trump would say. Like,
it's going to deliver in the long run.
Yeah. It's quadruple A.
I hate to keep shitting on a game, but
focus on the words he says. It's a very big game. He's focusing on it's vast.
Yeah.
It's focusing on the size, not the quality.
Yeah, it's. I think this is going to be a sunken cost for Ubisoft, and I think we've seen it coming for some time, but we called Suicide Squad, we called Gotham Knights, and I think Skull and Bones is going to be 3 in a row for us, gents.
I think this game could have legs on it. I think the $70 price point is actually it's going to get in its way. But I think there is probably a decent survival game there, and a lot of survival games tend not to have the highest polish and still be fine. Like, you look at things like Ark and Valheim, not exactly the most polished games ever, but people love them.
Yeah, they also cost like £9 as well.
There is that.
That is
but
true.
If you've got this game on Ubisoft Plus, because you're interested in trying it, and then I could see having this leg. I don't think it's going to be the mainstream hit that Ubisoft think it should be.
I mean, people like pirates, so maybe it can just find some audience there. But if I was to ask you now, Richie, Assassin's Creed Red, Star Wars Outlaws,
Red,
or Skull and Bones?
Outlaws still Outlaws.
Yeah, okay, Skull and Bones.
It's doing the most different. It's the most interesting of the three by far.
I mean, we played it and it was okay. It was okay at best, which is I think the disappointing thing that we could have had two Black Flag sequels by now. It's back to the Arkham problem. Is this studio could have spent the decade making 2 spin-offs of Pirates Creed, and we could have just had 2 Pirates Creed games with a story, characters, great fun gameplay, with the seafaring pirate element as well. But instead we get Suicide Squad kills the Skull and Bones team / this. But we digress. Right, final stories from this week. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is getting its new Game Plus finally. It was due out before Christmas, but then the studio delayed, no doubt, after all the leaks and stuff. They probably had a lot of stuff to lock down and just reassess after all of that crap dropped before Christmas. New Game Plus mode, either of you two go back for this, or is it kind of passes? I always feel like New Game Plus should be there at launch so you can finish the campaign and just jump straight back in if you had fun. Now I'm several months attached, it's like,
I moved on.
Yeah, there was so much content packed into that game as well in terms of like side missions and collectibles. Like, I don't have a valid reason to go back.
It's New Game Plus, new suits and more, but new suits for a game I'm no longer playing about, I don't particularly care
Yeah.
about. If I was still playing, I'd care about them.
Mm-hmm.
New Game Plus, I don't think it's even if I decide to go back to a game in the future, I'd never really jump into New Game Plus, because with New Game Plus you jump in, it's like you're max level, you can't remember how to play. I'd rather go through the learning experience of the game again. So I very rarely play New Game Plus unless it is like I did for Final Fantasy 16 for trophy reasons, and then I went straight into it.
Or Starfield, where they erase everything you've ever done and just literally start from scratch to begin with anywhere.
It was an interesting concept, I just didn't like it.
But Spider-Man, like you said, Insomniac know what they're doing. It'll be some cool new skins. They'll promote it heavily on social media, and if you've not played it before, or if you're playing it for the first time, it's a great win to have in there. So yeah, New Game Plus. As a side note for that, do you two think we might get some DLC for Spider-Man 2, or do you think they're maybe just going to pivot and go straight into the Venom game? Because we know we had the City That Never Sleeps DLC for the first one. That was kind of staggered across every 3 months, but I don't think Spider-Man 2 needs it. I don't think it's asking for any DLC. I'd be quite happy to just wait for a Venom game now.
They've got Venom, they've got Wolverine, they've got Spider-Man 3. I don't think it needs DLC.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Brilliant, right. Last couple of stories. Game Pass games have been leaked, now confirmed by Microsoft for the month of February. So we've got Anucard, Train Sim World 4, Madden NFL 24 via EA Play, Resident Evil 3, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, A Little to Left, Played Up, Return to Grace, and Tales of Arise, all coming throughout the month of February, spread out via Game Pass. Standout one for us, obviously, is going to be Resident Evil 3, right, Rob? We got 2 last month, and now we're getting 3. Do you think we get 4 next month? In March? Or is it'll have been out for what, just over a year, just under a year? Resident Evil 4 remake?
Yeah, it might be too much of an ask, but maybe.
Be a good win though to get 1, 2, 3 triple hits of them.
Yeah.
Interesting. The rest of them, Bloodstained,
Tales of Arise deserves it. Tales of Arise deserves a shout out. Great game.
Absolutely. Okay month for Game Pass. We don't know what else is going to drop in there, but I think Resident Evil's the tentpole one. And then rounding out a quick one, Rob. I just want to touch in with you. WWE 24 scrubs Brock Lesnar from the front of the special edition. Is it worth getting into what the hell's going on with Brock Lesnar and the legal teams with Vince McMahon and that, or is that a whole other podcast unto itself?
Just for anybody who's ever watched WWE, like the character that Vince McMahon plays is reality.
It's not a character.
There's no coincidence that like every single diva had a story written where she had sex with Vince McMahon. It's just a disgusting thing, and it looks like lots of the stars which we appreciate when we were younger involved, which is a bit not nice. Let's just
a bit seedy, to say that.
I think it goes beyond seedy. I think it goes like
rapey.
Rapey is the word I want to use.
Rapey is the word. Brilliant. And then right, we'll just leave that where it is then. We won't get too much in that. He's been scrubbed from the front covers and stuff, and it's like the Hulk Hogan stuff all over again, but worse by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But here we are. Finally, we like to end every single show with a look back at this day in video game history, and finally, gentlemen, we seem to have a good one. We've done this, so we usually said the last couple of weeks that January was a quiet month. Well, now we're in February. Things are really popping off. For me, the first one, 27 years ago on this day, February the 10th, Mario Kart 64 was released.
Jesus.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
27?
Yeah, 27, Mario Kart 64. A lot of fun memories of this game, playing it around.
We need to play Mario Kart and stream.
How would it have to be via you or Nintendo? Switch Online, all of us?
Yeah, we'll figure a way out. Mario Kart 64, I think it might be on Switch Online, actually.
Could you imagine?
We could plan out, maybe do like a couch co-op thing,
something like that.
And,
what else have we got? Command and Conquer Generals, Rob. That for me was where the series kind of died when
that was such a fundamentally broken game. It was good, but it was broken on release.
I think the art style shocked me. You know, when it was like Roller Coaster Tycoon when they went to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and it was like a slightly different engine, and everything was a lot more like polished and polygonal rather than like isometric and locked in. Similar to Command and Conquer, where I was so used to that grid. And then when it was like it's a bit more free flowing, there was something inherent about it. I was like, I don't like.
Also,
it
we like the Red Alert franchise more than the main franchise, didn't we? So I can see how it's divided.
20 years ago, 2004, Pokemon Colosseum. Shout out to that one. We're probably going to get a remake or reboot on Switch some point soon. And Anything else from you, Jen, stand out?
No, I think it's Mario Kart 64 this year.
Yeah, it's hard. Any game going up against Mario Kart 64, it's just going to kind of fall away. It is one of the classic games of all time, isn't it?
Absolutely up there. Brilliant. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to the end of this week's episode of the GamerGuild Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching. Shout out to all of our guild heroes who, of course, support the channel from as little as 99p, just like you can. Click join below on the YouTube video where you get early access to this very show, stickers and badges next to your name, and you get to help us support and grow as much as we possibly can. We'll be back next week. We'll be back with a live stream in the coming days. Don't know what we're streaming this week. I won't be on this week's one. I also won't be on next week's podcast, so you'll see me in the future at some point. I'm doing a Richie. I'm ducking out and avoiding it all. Just had to get that last little one in there. But we'll be back.
Doing a Richie. Okay, that's fine.
Doing a Richie. Don't forget to follow us
I'll take it.
on all social feeds at GamerGuildTV. You can find me at CyberChris2077. Richie is at...
No.
Anywhere else aside from this podcast?
I'm Richie C89.
Rob's in the Discord because you just don't do socials, Rob.
No, I don't. I'm
Don't do socials. You're like a Helldiver. That's all
I'm trying to think of a cool celebrity who doesn't have socials. I'm like Christian Bale.
Not Donald Trump.
No, I'm like Christian Bale.
No, Donald Trump got kicked off socials.
True.
And keep tuned for all the Xbox news that drops this week because it's going to be a big one. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
And I've been Rob.
We've been GamerGuildTV. Remember, folks, play whatever makes you the happiest, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.